All right, Andrew, thank you. It is time to talk about your money here on Good Morning Quad Cities. First, let's take a look at how the stock market is doing at the end of last week's trading. S&P 500 up just under 6%, the NASDAQ up 8%, as you can see right there, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average about up just plus 4%, I guess we could call that. So on Thursday, the Department of Labor reporting the rate of inflation fell from 8.2% down slightly to 7.7%. The better than expected inflation reports set stock prices surging on Thursday and also on Friday. The news helped send the benchmark S&P 500 stock index to its best weekly performance in over 5 months, while the NASDAQ had its biggest gain in over 14 years. Joining us this morning is our numbers expert, is like what we like to call him, Mark Gravicheski. He is from the Quad Cities Investment Group. Good to have you with us. Good morning.
Good morning, Ann. Great to see you again, as always.
So we have to break this down with the latest inflation report. It triggered the surge that we just saw in the stock market. Yeah. Explain that to us.
Sure. Well, over the last 4 months, and we have seen this, kind of gradual decline in inflation since it reached a high of 9.1% back in June. But when you took a closer look at that data over the last 4 months, it either failed to meet Wall Street's expectations, or it even raised even more cautionary flags on the state of inflation. But on Thursday, overall, and this was a fairly good inflation report. Inflation fell from 8.2% down to 7.7%, but more importantly, and that 7.7% inflation rate beat Wall Street's forecast of 8%. And it was the first time in about 3 to 4 months or so that inflation actually came in better than expected. And that's why I think that really triggered that stock market surge we saw on Thursday and Friday.
We see you every week, at least every single week. And for the past, 6 months or so, you've argued that inflation will likely remain historically high for quite some time. So does this latest report that we saw on Thursday, does that change your mind in any way?
Unfortunately, Ann, it doesn't. And here's why. Let me explain. In the short term, there's a number of areas in the economy that I think will continue to struggle with rising prices. Just 2 examples at the top of my list, energy, housing, rents, among many others. But from a longer term perspective, and the number one cause of this high inflation is that we've literally flooded the economy with money over the past couple of years. Since February 2020, just before the pandemic, and there's roughly 42% more money that's circulating around the U.S. economy. And what do people tend to do with all that money? Well, they tend to go out and spend it. And that creates a tremendous upward pressure on consumer prices. Until we get this excess money under control, I still think it's going to be until 2024 until we finally see a return to that ideal 2% target rate of inflation we'd like to get back to.
With the rally we just saw on Thursday and Friday from this past week, the latest inflation report, do you think the rise in the stock market, will that continue as well?
Well, and I think we need to really differentiate between a short-term jump in stock prices, which I think is what we saw on Thursday and Friday, and compare that to, does this mean that the stock market will quickly return to those all-time highs that were set back in, late December, early January? We need to remember what caused this 11-plus month decline in the stock market in the first place, and that was inflation. And Wall Street needs to get some level of comfort that this inflation is finally under control. And it's not quite there yet, Ann. And until Wall Street does get that level of comfort, I find it very, very difficult for Wall Street to be willing to push the stock market back to those all-time highs we saw at the very beginning of the year. Without question, and yes, Thursday's inflation report was good, but it was just 1 month. And I think Wall Street wants further clarity on inflation, on rising interest rates. To what extent do we get that projected recession next year before it fully commits to some type of an extended rally? So Thursday, Friday rally was great, but we'll see how things pan out over the upcoming months.
All right, Mark, great to see you on this Monday. Make it a great week.
You as well, Ann. Great to see you again. Take care.